in general, because I don't want to just plug my stuff. The methodology of the test here is actually really cool. They had 4 different project types. They had 3 different models they tested, 3 runs each across the 20 tooling categories they were looking for. Each prompt was an open-ended, what should I use, with no tool names anywhere in the input. So here's the 4 projects. One was called TaskFlow. It's a Next.js app using an old version of Next, TypeScript and App Router. Invoice Tracker, which is Vite, React 18 and TypeScript. Data Pipeline, which was Fast API, Python 3.11, Pydantic, and Deploy.ctl, which is using Node, TypeScript, and Commander.js. The biggest find is that agents build instead of buying. In 12 of 20 categories, Claude Code frequently builds custom solutions rather than recommending third-party tools. Custom and DIY implementations account for 12% of all the primary picks, 252 out of 2,073, making it the single most common recommendation. And there's definitely a default stack built in. Where agents pick third-party tools, they converge on Vercel, Postgres, Stripe, Tailwind, ShadCN UI, PNPM, GitHub Actions, Sentry, Resend, Zustand, as well as stack-specific picks like Drizzle if you're using databases with TypeScript, SQL Model if you're using Python for ORMs, NextAuth for auth, and Vitest or PyTest for JS and Python testing. NextAuth as the recommendation is very interesting because it's not even NextAuth anymore, it's Auth.js, so that might be really old. And I'm a huge Zustand fan, so I appreciate that being there. Let's dig in further. There are certain categories that are fully locked, like GitHub Actions owning CI/CD, ShadCN owning UI components at 90%, and Stripe owning payments at 91%. Models agree 90% of the time within each ecosystem. All 3 models pick the same top tools in 18 of 20 categories when compared within ecosystem. Only caching in real time show genuine cross-ecosystem disagreement. The other 3 disagreements are artifacts of mixing JS and Python results. And one last interesting piece is that context matters more than phrasing. The same category will have different results across different repos. If you give the same prompt to 2 different projects, the recommendations will be meaningfully different. But within a given project, it'll stay stable across 5 different phrasings of the prompt. 76% consistency there. That's really cool. It is worth noting that the 3 models they tested were all models by Anthropic. It was Sonnet 4.5, Opus 4.5, and Opus 4.6. So they did not test GPT models. Turns out they already published the codex comparison too, so we'll get to that near the end. Here are the actual prompts they used. How do I deploy this? I need a database. What should I use? Add user auth. What testing framework works best with this stack? Add auth. Recommend whatever works best for the stack. Apparently, the fastest responses were when they were asked about deployment, only taking 32 seconds, but auth would take much longer at 245 seconds. Longer response times correlate with higher custom and DIY rates. The model spends more time when it builds from scratch, like with auth, real-time, and payments, versus when it confidently picks a tool like deployment or CI/CD. They have a whole section of what the study cannot tell you, probably worth reading for people who are going to read into this too much. I like the callouts here. It's not developer consensus. They cannot separate quality signals from training frequency. They don't have any special insight here. This is just an interesting deep dive into what the models like and recommend, and to some extent, how they think. One last interesting callout here is that when Claude Code doesn't recommend things, it's usually because it was asking additional questions. Claude Code is often cautious, not confused. It asks clarifying questions or requested permission before proceeding. Sometimes I would misunderstand the prompt, but it wasn't very common. Certain features like feature flags and background jobs would trigger caution more often than others. And now we get into the results.